It was January 1998. A rumor starts to ripple through the air, whispered first in quiet corners, then shouted across every newsroom in America. By nightfall, it wasn't a rumor anymore. It was breaking news. The man everyone knew, the one whose grin could light up a room and silence a crowd, steps before a wall of cameras. His tone is firm, his face unreadable. He pauses just long enough for the tension to build, then delivers the line that will haunt him for years. "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." The clip repeats across every channel. Households go still. Bartenders turn up the volume. For a few seconds, the whole country seems to hold its breath. It's the same week. Titanic sits at #1 at the box office, and Truly Madly Deeply fills the radio airwaves. The 90s glow with their familiar charm, bright, colorful, restless. But something feels different now. Something has cracked. A private secret once whispered behind locked doors is suddenly everywhere, on TV, in tabloids, even in jokes told at office water coolers. People who had never followed the news before now debate it over dinner. No one can quite believe what they're hearing, but no one can turn away either. Behind closed doors, panic brews. Phones ring off the hook. Lawyers pace the floors. And sleepless aides trade whispers that sound more like confessions. Everyone can sense it. This isn't going away. A single line, one moment of denial, has turned into something much bigger. A scandal that will test loyalty, morality, and the limits of privacy itself. And it was only just beginning. But before the scandal, there was the charm. He came from somewhere quiet, the kind of place where everyone knows your middle name and ambition feels like rebellion. From there, he built himself brick by brick, smile by smile, handshake by handshake. Every step of his journey felt improbable, yet somehow inevitable. He didn't just speak, he connected. Crowds leaned in when he talked. He could make a joke land just as easily as he could make a promise sound deeply personal. That was his magic. He didn't seem above anyone. He seemed like everyone. In an era when television ruled the world, he became television's favorite guest. Slick hair, an easy grin, a quick laugh that seemed to say, "I'm not like the others." He played the saxophone on a late-night stage once, smooth, confident, effortlessly cool. It wasn't politics, it was showmanship, and America loved it. The world saw him as the embodiment of a new decade. Young, charming, and endlessly optimistic. He made people believe that maybe, just maybe, power could look human again. But behind the glow of charisma, there were always whispers. Stories passed around in private circles, then fiercely denied in public ones. Each time they surfaced, they vanished just as quickly, like smoke disappearing into the air. He had a way of dodging scandal the same way he dodged tough questions with charm. And for years, that worked. His confidence was bulletproof, his smile disarming. Even those who didn't trust him couldn't seem to look away. But every story, no matter how carefully managed, has a breaking point. And his would come not from a political rival or a critic, but from something far more dangerous: attraction. She arrived in the middle of the decade, young, eager, and full of that restless energy that only comes from believing you part of something bigger than yourself. To her, the place felt sacred. The air itself seemed charged with history. Every hallway echoed with importance. Every face looked like it belonged to destiny. She was fresh out of school, carrying nothing but curiosity, nerves, and a quiet hope that she might just belong here. At first, she blended in, just a small part of a very large machine. But sometimes, all it takes is one encounter to change everything. He noticed her one afternoon. It wasn't in a grand way, not the kind of cinematic glance that comes with swelling music. Just a passing moment. A joke shared between them, a laugh that lingered a second too long. And from that moment on, something invisible began to form. An energy, an understanding, a pull that neither of them could quite define. To her, he was larger than life, a figure she'd only ever seen through television screens and newspaper headlines. But up close, he was surprisingly human. Funny, relaxed, familiar. He had that rare kind of warmth that could make anyone feel seen. And she, so young, so hopeful, mistook attention for affection, admiration for safety. Days turned into weeks. A conversation here, a compliment there. Something small began to bloom in the shadows of power. Quiet, thrilling, and completely impossible. They both knew it couldn't last, but neither of them wanted it to stop. In a place built on secrets, they had created one of their very own. A secret that felt intoxicating at first, until it became dangerous. Because even the most careful whispers can echo louder than you think. In the beginning, it was their secret. A language of glances and inside jokes, written in invisible ink that only they could read. The thrill wasn't just in the affection. It was in the risk. It lived in the stolen moments behind closed doors, the hurried goodbyes, the small tokens they passed between them as proof that this world they built was real. A tie left draped over a chair. A blue dress hanging quietly in the back of a closet. They were tiny souvenirs from a life that wasn't supposed to exist. He was living two lives now. One was in the spotlight, where every wave and handshake was photographed. The other was in the shadows, built on silence and trust. Each time they met, the world outside would just fade away, replaced by whispers and the relentless ticking of a clock that always ran out too soon. But time, much like secrets, has a way of catching up. She started to confide in someone she trusted. Someone older, a friend who just listened, who never interrupted, and who always seemed to have time. What she didn't realize was that this friend wasn't just listening. She was saving every word, every laugh, every confession, every trembling detail was being recorded for safekeeping. What had started as simple affection was quietly transforming into evidence. Meanwhile, he carried on as if nothing had changed. Publicly, he was composed. Privately, he was unraveling, balancing speeches and scandals, diplomacy and denial. He didn't yet know that the walls were closing in, that behind the smiles and ceremonies, a storm was gathering. And it wouldn't stay private for much longer. Because once a secret leaves one mouth too many, it stops belonging to you. It becomes a story, and stories have a life of their own. It all began with friendship, or at least that's what it looked like. Two people trading stories, gossip, and secrets over phone calls that felt completely harmless. The younger one believed she'd found a confidant, someone who finally understood just how heavy a secret could feel. What she didn't know was that every word was being captured, not by memory, but by a machine. Those tiny clicks, the faint static, the telltale signs of a recorder hiding somewhere close. Each conversation was quietly preserved, each confession becoming a piece of a puzzle she didn't even know existed. The person listening on the other end wasn't after comfort. She was after proof. Miles away, a different kind of storm was forming. One made of subpoenas, investigations, and whispered deals. An inquiry that had started with something entirely different had begun to drift towards something far more scandalous. All it needed was a spark. And those tapes, those secret recordings, were the match. Suddenly, what had been a private entanglement was transformed into a weapon. People in expensive suits began making phone calls late into the night. Reporters started sniffing around, piecing together names, timelines, and evidence. The story, once safely buried behind closed doors, was now bleeding into the public eye. He had no idea how much had already slipped out. She had no idea how much she'd given away. The world was about to know everything. The jokes, the denials, the late-night calls, all of it. In the end, it wasn't the affair itself that broke the dam. It was the betrayal that followed. Because when trust becomes leverage, there's no going back. By now, the whispers had become headlines. The quiet rumors, once buried deep in gossip columns, were plastered across the front pages of every newspaper. Every photograph of him was suddenly under intense scrutiny. Every gesture, every smile was reinterpreted through the lens of scandal. And then came the day that would define it all. A crowd of reporters, the constant hum of cameras, and him, standing before the entire world, unflinching. He adjusted the microphone, squared his shoulders, and spoke with absolute conviction. "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." The words hung in the air like a challenge, defiant, final. It was the kind of denial so bold that people didn't know whether to believe it or to be shocked by it. Within hours, that clip was everywhere. Television screens flickered with his image. Talk radio exploded. Comedians rushed to their writers' rooms. Across the country, conversations divided entire households. Some saw a witch hunt, a man hounded by enemies who just couldn't stand to see him succeed. Others saw pure arrogance, a man too powerful to ever tell the truth. America had always loved drama, but this wasn't a movie. This was real life playing out in real time. Even late-night television couldn't resist. His face became a punchline, his voice, an impression. It was the 90s, and scandal was now entertainment. Behind the cameras, the younger woman watched in silence as the world dissected her very existence. Every detail of her private life became a public feast. Her clothes, her handwriting, her silence. She was no longer a person. She was just a headline. And he, the man she once admired, was now a symbol of power, of denial, and of downfall. The press couldn't get enough. The public couldn't look away. And the line he'd spoken with such confidence would soon become the one that haunted him forever. What started as gossip had now become history. The jokes faded, the headlines hardened, and the story turned from scandal to something much heavier. In a grand chamber lined with marble and microphones, the most private story in the world became public evidence. Voices echoed through the room, reading transcripts, recounting timelines, dissecting words. Every detail that should have been forgotten was instead catalogued, analyzed, and replayed. The world watched, not through whispers this time, but through gavel strikes and sworn oaths. Some tuned in for justice. Most, let's be honest, tuned in for the spectacle. He sat there, his expression carved from stone, as his past was read back to him. Not the speeches, not the political victories, but the late-night calls, the mistakes, the lies told to protect them. Each revelation landed like a bruise, and the younger woman, now stripped of her anonymity, became an unwilling witness in the trial of her own life. Her choices, her very existence, were turned into a national debate. People who had never met her spoke her name as if they knew her. Cartoonists drew her face. Strangers on late-night television mocked her voice. And through it all, she stayed silent, watching her own story be told by everyone but herself. The chamber became a stage. The cameras were relentless. And as the world argued over morality and truth, something deeper began to unravel. The public's faith. Because beneath the outrage, people started to see themselves in the chaos. The little lies they tell, the things they hide, the masks they wear to look clean in public. By the time the final decision came down, the outcome surprised no one. He would keep his place, technically cleared but morally and permanently scarred. The system had spoken, but the public had already passed its own judgment. He left the building that day with the same calm, practiced smile he'd always worn, but something was gone. The myth of invincibility had cracked, and even though both of them would eventually step back into the world, neither would ever walk in the light the same way again. When the noise finally faded, a heavy silence moved in. The cameras turned away, the late-night jokes got old, and two lives, once tangled in secrecy, drifted into very different kinds of exile. She vanished first. No interviews, no public tears, just a profound absence. For years, her name became shorthand for shame, a cruel joke told by people who didn't know her, a cautionary tale. But time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges, and when she eventually returned, she didn't come back to apologize. She came back to speak about survival, about humiliation, about what it means to live in a world that never lets you forget your worst mistake. She turned the pain that nearly destroyed her into something stronger, a warning, a message, a voice for anyone who'd ever been humiliated on the world's biggest stage. He, meanwhile, learned to live with the shadow. He smiled through interviews, attended global events, and wrote books. He became a symbol of resilience, but never quite of innocence. The world forgave him, mostly. Or perhaps it just moved on to the next thing. He rebuilt his reputation the way he had built his career, through sheer charm, powerful connections, and the steady march of time. But the scar never fully faded. It just learned to hide beneath the suit. The story they left behind became something much bigger than either of them. It was never just about an affair. It was about the collision of immense power and profound vulnerability. It was about how technology, still young, still hungry, turned private shame into a public spectacle. In a way, it marked the beginning of a new era, one where scandals didn't die. They just lived online, forever. Looking back now, that moment feels almost innocent. There were no smartphones, no viral clips spreading in seconds, no instant outrage machine on social media. There was just television, the tabloids, and a country learning just how addictive gossip could be. But the lesson was clear, even if few of us truly learned it. Every generation would have its own scandal, its own public downfall, its own reckoning with the shifting lines between truth and image. And it all began with a secret that refused to stay quiet. It was never just about sex. It was about power. It was about betrayal. And it was about how the 90s blurred the line between news and entertainment, until they became the exact same thing. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the moments that shaped our world. We'll see you in the next one.